Harry said racism was a big part of their decision to leave, which you know things are bad at Buckingham Palace if they came to America to get away from racism.
Hey.
Did you know it's cold in there?
Yeah, it's the refrigerator, Harry.
Must be an American thing.
Harry and Meghan live here now, and America loves them. We love them, right? Is it?
What is the number one question that mystifies scientists? Number one question.
Mystifies scientists. Is there life on another planet?
Oh, no. Why does Meghan Markle make her own pretzel bags? They don't know why.
That's interesting. She takes it from one bag and puts it in another bag.
It's another bag.
And that confuses people.
This, we're just gonna put into a different bag.
Now for the tricky part. Place in microwave. What is microwave? I don't think we have any of that. Harry, do we have any microwave?
I hate Meghan Markle. She's like, I don't want attention. Bitch, you die for attention. That's what you want. I don't think Harry makes her calm. I think attention makes her calm.
Not many public figures have managed to attract as much criticism in recent years as Meghan Markle, and that became even more noticeable when she landed the #1 position on a widely discussed list of the most disliked celebrities of 2025. The ranking sparked countless conversations online because of who appeared just below her. Diddy came in second, and that comparison alone had people doing double takes. Whether people agreed with the list or not, it instantly became one of those topics everyone seemed to have an opinion about. Social media exploded with reactions, debates, memes, and clips as people argued over how the rankings were determined and whether they reflected public sentiment. Regardless of where anyone stood, the list certainly grabbed attention, and Meghan's position at the top became another headline.
So true. Not just true. So true. Everyone thinks marrying a prince is like a fairy tale. Turns out it's not. Meghan Markle said that when she joined the royal family, they took away her passport, driver's license, and keys. Welcome to the royal family. Please remove your belt and get ready for a cavity search. That says at William and Kate's wedding, Harry was suffering from a frostbitten penis. For real. He admitted this. He got frostbite on an expedition to the North Pole. He wrote, upon arriving home, I'd been horrified to discover that my nether regions were frost-nipped, while the ears and cheeks were already healing, the todger wasn't. It's very British to refer your penis as a todger, and very scary.
In an already long stream of public discussion surrounding her, then came Jimmy Kimmel. And what made his segment stand out wasn't that he launched into some elaborate attack on Prince Harry and Meghan. Instead, he leaned into material that had already been making headlines and let the audience connect the dots themselves. Rather than forcing punchlines, he presented familiar stories with a heavy dose of sarcasm, allowing the humor to build naturally. In many ways, that approach made the jokes land even harder because viewers already recognized the references. The audience wasn't trying to figure out what he meant. They already knew the background, and that made every pause and every expression part of the comedy. Sometimes the funniest moments don't come from inventing new material. They come from pointing at what's already out there and saying, well, that happened, and letting everyone else react. One of Jimmy's first targets was Meghan's well-known frustrations with adjusting to royal traditions and expectations. His comparison quickly became one of the highlights of the monologue. He joked as though Meghan expected the British royal family, an institution that has existed for centuries upon centuries, to function more like an Airbnb than one of the world's oldest monarchies.
Very British to refer your penis as a todger, and very scary. You know, without a functioning todger, it's impossible to Roger. You can't...
According to the joke, she seemed to expect good vibes, flexible rules, plenty of freedom, and maybe even complimentary parking while living inside a royal palace. The image was intentionally ridiculous, and that's exactly why the audience laughed so loudly. It painted an exaggerated picture of someone arriving at an ancient institution expecting everything to operate according to modern personal preferences instead of long-established customs. Whether people found the comparison fair or simply entertaining, it became one of those moments that spread across social media almost immediately. Jimmy didn't stay on that topic for long before shifting to something even stranger, one of the most talked about stories from Prince Harry's own memoir. And here's the important part. None of this required anyone to invent details. because Harry himself included the story in the book. That's what made the audience react the way they did. Jimmy barely needed to add much because the material already sounded unbelievable to many listeners. As people watched the segment, you could almost imagine them wondering, wait, he really decided to publish that? It wasn't the kind of story most people would expect from someone born into one of the most famous families on earth. Instead, it became one of the most frequently discussed passages from the memoir, generating headlines, television discussions, internet jokes, and endless online commentary that naturally led to another point Jimmy emphasized during the routine. This is the same couple that has frequently spoken about wanting understanding, privacy, respect, and sympathy from the public. Yet at the same time, Harry voluntarily shared deeply personal stories that immediately became worldwide talking points. Jimmy highlighted that contrast because it practically spoke for itself. Many viewers couldn't help noticing the contradiction between asking for privacy.
It is crazy to learn that the prince went to his brother, the royal wedding, with a frozen Todger. And when you really examine the video, I want you to listen closely here because it makes a lot more sense.
I froze my Todger. Psst, Harry froze his Todger.
Dearly beloved, Prince Harry's hot dog is now a very, very cold dog, as he has frozen his Todger. Amen. Please rise, since Harry's royal wiener cannot.
While also publishing intimate details for millions of readers. Whether people defended Harry's openness or questioned his decision, there was no denying that the memoir invited enormous public discussion. Once those stories were printed, they became impossible to separate from the larger conversation surrounding the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. Think about the timing for just a second. A future king is preparing to get married. Global media outlets are covering every angle. Cameras are everywhere. Millions of people are watching what feels like a historic chapter in royal history. It's one of the biggest events of the decade, and history books will eventually look back on it as a defining royal moment. Yet when people later discussed Harry's memoir, one of the chapters receiving the most attention wasn't some dramatic behind-the-scenes constitutional revelation or an untold royal secret. Instead, countless conversations focused on an intensely personal anecdote that many readers never expected to see in print. It became the kind of story people mentioned over and over simply because it was so unexpected.
Prince Harry, whose memoir just broke the Guinness record for fastest selling nonfiction book of all time. The story of Prince Harold and his frozen yogurt slinger is so popular, they're now releasing a version for kids. I don't know if you know about this. It's a twist on The Princess and the Pea. It's called The Prince and the Penis, and it's, by the way, if the kids are still up, this would be...
Once people heard about it, they couldn't forget it, and the internet made sure nobody stopped talking about it. Jimmy wasn't finished yet. When Prince Harry's memoir went on to earn the Guinness World Record for the fastest-selling non-fiction book, plenty of people might have expected applause or congratulations. Jimmy chose a completely different direction. Rather than treating the achievement like an untouchable accomplishment, he used it as another setup for comedy. Instead of celebrating the record with dramatic praise, he transformed the entire situation into a playful children's book parody on national television. The audience immediately understood the joke, and the laughter kept building because the contrast itself was funny. A record-breaking memoir became the foundation for a bedtime story-style parody, making the accomplishment feel less like a serious literary milestone and more like another unforgettable late-night comedy moment. And if we're being practical for a moment, it's easy to understand why the memoir attracted enormous attention in the first place. Harry wasn't just another celebrity releasing a book. He was, well, at the time, a literal prince. Books connected to members of the British royal family naturally generate worldwide curiosity before readers even turn the first page. People weren't necessarily rushing to bookstores because they expected groundbreaking literature or award-winning prose. Many were simply curious about what new royal stories, personal reflections, or behind-the-scenes experiences might finally be revealed. Royal history has always fascinated audiences, and a first-hand account from someone raised inside that world was almost guaranteed to become a publishing sensation. That's a level of public interest very few authors could ever hope to match. And that's really the point Jimmy kept circling back to throughout the segment. The enormous sales weren't just about writing style or literary recognition. Curiosity played a huge role. Readers wanted the stories. They wanted the family dynamics. They wanted the royal headlines explained from Harry's perspective. And yes, they also discovered some remarkably personal passages that quickly dominated conversations online. Even today, one of the most widely discussed sections remains the chapter describing his frostbite experience involving his private parts, a story that many people never expected to find inside a royal memoir, yet somehow became one of the book's most unforgettable talking points, as though it had been presented as an absolutely essential chapter in human history. That was the point where the conversation really shifted into another gear. Once Jimmy Kimmel turned Prince Harry and Meghan into regular late-night comedy material, it felt like the floodgates had opened. Suddenly, they weren't just being mentioned in news reports or royal discussions anymore. They had become recurring subjects for comedians, television hosts, commentators, and satirical programs. The jokes spread quickly, and before long, it seemed like everyone wanted to put their own spin on the headlines. It wasn't a slow rollout either. The reaction came fast, loud, and from every direction, making Harry and Meghan some of the most talked about public figures on television. Even long-running satire shows like Spitting Image jumped into the conversation, adding their own exaggerated take on the royal couple. But this is where the story starts moving away from simple comedy and into something much more uncomfortable. According to widespread reports at the time, Meghan Markle was said to have pursued legal action connected to Spitting Image over the way she believed she had been portrayed. Whether people agreed with that decision or not, the reports immediately fueled another wave of headlines. Instead of the focus staying on the comedy itself, attention shifted toward the response, with critics and supporters debating whether public figures should simply ignore satire or challenge it through legal channels. That discussion quickly became almost as big as the original jokes. And if that situation sounds familiar, there's a reason for it. Many people immediately compared it to the earlier controversy involving South Park, where Harry and Meghan were also heavily parodied. That episode generated enormous attention across television, social media, and online discussions. We'll get into that entire situation later because there's plenty to unpack there. And it's definitely worth looking at in more detail. But before reaching that point, it's important to understand how the jokes kept spreading from one comedian to another. Once one late-night host covered the topic, others followed, each adding their own perspective and style of humor. That's when Jimmy Carr entered the picture and delivered his own take on Meghan's carefully presented public image. His routine questioned whether the image being presented matched the way many people perceived recent events. Like much of his comedy, the jokes relied on sharp observations and exaggeration, leaving the audience to decide for themselves how much they agreed. Whether viewers laughed or disagreed, his comments became another example of how frequently Harry and Meghan were appearing in stand-up routines and comedy monologues during that period. Jimmy Carr also joked about Prince Harry's upbringing, suggesting that much of his early life revolved around strict royal expectations and constantly seeking approval before making important decisions. The routine painted a humorous picture of someone who always had another layer of protocol to navigate, joking that everything required permission first, almost as if the answer was always, "Better ask Grandma." It was classic Jimmy Carr humor, exaggerating reality for comedic effect while playing on the public's long-standing fascination with royal traditions. The jokes didn't stop with stand-up comedians either. Even Family Guy joined in, proving that Harry and Meghan had become recognizable enough to appear in animated satire. When fictional cartoon characters start referencing your public image, it's a sign you've become part of pop culture in a completely different way. Viewers joked that it wasn't just television hosts making fun of the headlines anymore. Now even animated characters were getting involved. The fact that the couple became material for scripted comedy across multiple formats showed just how widely the stories had spread. Of course, Their Netflix partnership eventually became another target for comedians as well. By that point, almost every major entertainment discussion seemed to include at least one joke about the deal, the documentaries, or the couple's public projects. Then, Kelly Osbourne entered the conversation, and she made it clear she wasn't planning to soften her opinions. She openly questioned Harry's public messaging, arguing that while everyone experiences difficult moments in life, many people felt he often spoke as though his struggles were entirely unique. Her broader point was that hardship is something nearly everyone faces, and public sympathy isn't automatically unlimited just because someone shares their experiences. Kelly also touched on another issue that had already been circulating in public conversations. She argued that public image is difficult to reshape once people have already formed strong opinions. In her view, if someone becomes involved in widely discussed public controversies, it can be challenging to later present a completely different image without audiences remembering those earlier moments. Her comments reflected a broader debate already happening online, where supporters and critics continued arguing over reputation, accountability, and whether public perception can really change overnight, as though everyone's memory simply resets overnight. From that point forward, critics argued that Meghan's public support for Harry only added another layer to the discussion. They believed she continued presenting him as someone who was misunderstood and unfairly judged, while others felt the conversation should have focused more on personal responsibility instead. Supporters saw the couple as standing together through constant public scrutiny, while critics interpreted it differently. That contrast became part of the larger debate surrounding Harry and Meghan, with each new interview or public appearance adding fuel to an already active conversation. No matter which side people were on, the discussion rarely stayed quiet for very long. Not long after that, Trevor Noah added his own voice to the growing list of comedians commenting on the couple. Instead of treating the situation like another chapter in an ongoing royal family drama, he approached it from a completely different angle. His comedy focused less on crowns, palaces, and royal titles, and more on what everyday life actually looks like outside those walls. His message, delivered through humor, was essentially, okay, enough fairy tale, welcome to real life. The audience immediately understood where he was going with the joke, and the reaction showed that many people recognized the contrast he was describing. The reason that joke landed with so many viewers was because it completely flipped the familiar narrative. For years, much of the public conversation had centered on ideas like escaping royal life, finding freedom, or starting over. Trevor Noah's routine shifted the focus towards something much simpler. Instead of asking what Harry had escaped from, the joke asked what everyday responsibilities actually looked like once the royal lifestyle was gone. It wasn't about castles or ceremonies anymore. It became a comedy routine about ordinary adult life, where bills arrive every month, responsibilities don't disappear, and nobody is there to organize every detail for you. Trevor continued building on that idea by imagining what life might look like without the structure that had surrounded Harry for most of his life. No palace staff, no formal schedules arranged by assistants, no royal household handling countless day-to-day responsibilities behind the scenes. Instead, the routine painted a picture of someone adjusting to a much more ordinary lifestyle, where practical decisions and everyday responsibilities suddenly become part of the routine. The exaggeration was clearly part of the comedy, but it was enough to get the audience laughing because it played on a familiar public perception. Then came one of the routine's biggest punchlines. Trevor jokingly imagined Meghan looking over at Harry and asking, "Well, so what do you do exactly?" That single line quickly became one of the standout moments because it took a complicated public discussion and reduced it to a simple everyday question. Whether people agreed with the joke or thought it was unfair, it was exactly the kind of observational humor that late-night audiences tend to remember. The laughter wasn't just about the line itself, it was about how easily people connected it to the larger public conversation surrounding the couple. But the comedy didn't stop with late-night television. In fact, this is where the story takes another turn and moves toward the clips that many viewers have talked about ever since. Among Britain's most recognizable satire programs, Spitting Image became another show to weigh in on Harry and Meghan. Known for its exaggerated puppet portrayals and sharp political humor, The program didn't hold back when it came to parodying public figures. This time, one of its targets was Meghan's Netflix project, and the sketches immediately attracted attention because of how direct and over-the-top the satire was. Fans of the series expected bold comedy, and the show certainly stayed true to that reputation. Then something happened that only made people even more curious. Not long after several of the Meghan and Harry-related clips appeared online, viewers noticed that a number of those videos were no longer available on YouTube. There wasn't an obvious explanation attached to every removal, and that immediately sparked speculation across social media. Some people wondered what had happened, while others simply noticed that content they had previously seen was suddenly difficult or impossible to find. The unexpected disappearance became part of the story itself, with online discussions shifting from the sketches to the missing videos. The situation became even more noticeable because Spitting Image later released a separate video acknowledging that episodes connected to the couple had been removed from YouTube. That acknowledgement only fueled even more discussion online as viewers tried to piece together what had happened and why the videos were no longer available, making the removals almost as widely talked about as the original satire itself. So the obvious question is, what was so controversial that those videos ended up disappearing? According to many viewers, it was Spitting Image's sharp parody of Meghan's Netflix show, With Love, Meghan. The satire immediately focused on what critics believed was the show's biggest weakness. Their joke was that everything on the series felt completely ordinary, but was presented as if it was some exclusive luxury experience. Everyday activities were treated like extraordinary moments simply because Meghan was hosting them. They mocked nearly everything: the breathwork sessions, the dramatic pauses, the flower arranging, and the constant effort to make simple routines seem elegant, meaningful, and important. The sketch suggested the show almost refused to let anything feel normal, and that's where things became even more interesting. To be fair, no official explanation has confirmed why those Spitting Image videos disappeared from YouTube. Any link between the removals and criticism of Harry and Meghan remains speculation. Still, many people question the timing, especially after the attention surrounding South Park and its famous Worldwide Privacy Tour episode. The difference many pointed out is that South Park is a much larger production. Whether the removals were connected or simply a coincidence, the missing clips only created more curiosity. Looking ahead, critics argue Harry and Meghan had a chance to reshape their public image, but instead continued with the same approach, leaving many viewers unconvinced. What do you think? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss our next upload.